Coming up on this Wednesday edition of Newsline at noon, condemning Tokyo's decision to teach its claim to the Korea-controlled Dokdo Island to school kids, Seoul will launch an international research project on Japan's imperialistic aggressions. After North Korea ignores South Korea's proposal to hold a working-level meeting today to arrange inter-Korean family reunions next month at the North Mount Kumgang Resort, Seoul urges Pyongyang to give everyone an answer as soon as possible. Plus, all of Korea's credit card firms and their affiliates will face special probes next month after a handful of them were at fault for the country's biggest ever personal data leak. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Choi Yusun in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. We start this lunchtime with yet another strain on Korea-Japan ties. Seoul has strongly denounced Tokyo's decision to teach another generation of school children about its imperialistic claims to Korea's Dokdo Island.
Korean officials have warned of countermeasures if the revised teaching guidelines are not withdrawn immediately. Our Oh Jin-ju has more.
How much further can Korea-Japan relations sink? The Japanese government has decided to define the Korea-controlled Dokdo Island and a disputed island chain in the East China Sea as its own territory in its revised manual on government guidelines for teachers in middle and high school textbooks. Seoul's foreign ministry summoned Japanese ambassador to Korea, Koro Betso, in response and lodged a protest.
I'm here to convey our government's grave opposition to Japan's education ministry, as it today maliciously included its reckless claims in the teaching guidelines for middle schools and high schools.
The Korean government condemned the new teaching guidelines and demanded the plan be withdrawn immediately. If they're not, Seoul vowed to carry out appropriate measures.
The Japanese government has continued to make false claims over Dokdo, which is the first victim of Japanese imperialistic plunder. And trying to teach it to future generations clearly shows that it has not moved beyond the nostalgia of its past imperialism and its evil practice of distorting history.
The new manual, unveiled by the Japanese government Tuesday, includes a statement that Korea is, quote, illegally occupying Takeshima, which is what Japan calls the islets, and that the Japanese government is protesting the action. On the islands called Senkaku in Japan and Diaoyu in China, Tokyo says it is effectually controlling the island chain and that there are no territorial disputes to resolve.
Japan will educate about Japanese territory and will also look to have friendly relations with surrounding countries. I don't see any contradiction between these two things.
In 2008, the Japanese government included a statement in its manual that called the Dokdo Island issue between Korea and Japan as a, quote, difference in opinion. Even then, when Japan didn't outright claim Dokdo as its territory in the manual, the two nations' ties were under great strain. But now with Tokyo putting their stance into stronger language, it's hard to see relations improving anytime soon. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News.
The U.S. state of Georgia has taken a meaningful step toward calling the body of water between Korea and Japan East Sea. The Georgia State Senate unanimously passed a resolution Tuesday in which it refers to the water by the Korean name East Sea, not the Japanese name of Sea of Japan. The non-binding resolution was put forward by Republican State Senator David Schaefer. This comes as the U.S. state of Virginia awaits its lower house's decision on whether or not to require public school texts in Virginia to call the water both the East Sea and the Sea of Japan. Korea argues the name Sea of Japan reflects Japan's imperialistic past and that at the very least, both names should be used. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has dismissed outright suggestions Japan might want to consider building a new shrine to honor the country's war dead following international controversy surrounding his recent trip to the Yasukuni War Shrine. In a party questioning session this week, Abe said other countries' comments regarding an alternative war shrine should not be taken into consideration. Abe added that paying respects to a country's war dead is a necessary act as state leader. Japan's neighbors, including Korea and China, condemned Abe's visit last month to the Yasukuni Shrine, which honors several convicted Class A war criminals.
Now, it's been 2 days since South Korea made its proposal to hold reunions next month for families separated since the Korean War, but Seoul is still awaiting an answer from North Korea. South Korea's unification ministry says it sent a message to the North through the Inter-Korean hotline this morning, urging it to reply as soon as possible if it is sincere about resuming the reunions. On Monday, Seoul offered to reopen the long-suspended event from February 17th to the 22nd and to hold working-level talks on Wednesday, that is today, to go over the details. Now, many are expecting the North to reply today, and if so, the ministry said working-level talks on the reunions can still take place. They'll take place on Thursday or immediately after the Lunar New Year holiday. We will, of course, keep you updated on the developments throughout the day. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has met with the family of a Korean-American jailed in North Korea in a show of Washington's commitment to securing his release. In a statement released after Tuesday's meeting, the State Department renewed its call on North Korea to pardon Kenneth Bae and release him immediately. State Department spokeswoman Jen Psaki said, "There is no greater priority for the U.S. than securing the welfare and safety of its citizens abroad." Washington has offered to dispatch its special envoy for North Korean human rights issues, Robert King, to Pyongyang to negotiate Bae's release, but there's been no response from the North. And according to Japan's Kyodo News Service, King reportedly met with the North Korean representative at the North Korean mission to the UN in New York last week and conveyed the same offer, but the North Korean official gave no clear answer in response.
The bird flu crisis gripping South Korea is showing no signs of abating. The nation is on high alert, especially as the Lunar New Year holiday, which will see millions on march to their hometowns, begins tomorrow. Authorities say efforts to contain the spread over the next few days, in particular, will be vital. Our Kwon So-ah reports.
The battle against bird flu will continue over the Lunar New Year holiday, with disease prevention authorities tightening measures to prevent the virus spreading any further. Government employees, local self-governing bodies, the military and police will be on 24-hour standby over the 4-day holiday. Concerns are rising that with an estimated 30 million people on the move over the holiday period, the flu could spread to even more regions. The government has therefore ordered the installation of sterilization facilities and interchanges on highways across the nation. The public is also being asked to refrain from visiting poultry farms and migratory bird habitats and to take extra care not to step on animal droppings. The Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs said the virus can be contained if everyone pulls together.
I ask for your active cooperation in preventive measures during trips to your hometowns this Lunar New Year holiday, even if it's inconvenient.
The minister also said stock breeding farms should sterilize their facilities and surrounding areas every day and immediately report any suspected bird flu outbreaks to the Agriculture Ministry. There are now fears the virus has even spread to the southeastern part of the nation in Gyeongsang-Namdo province. The Agriculture Ministry said on Wednesday that a suspected case at a chicken farm in the city of Arirang was reported Tuesday night. Officials say around 70 chickens were found dead at the farm. New suspected cases also popped up in several farms in west of the country, and the virus was confirmed in Korea's central Chungcheongbuk-do province and another further south in Chungcheong-Namdo province on Tuesday. Meanwhile, farms that have been devastated by the mass culling of their ducks and chickens will receive government compensation before the end of the week. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Lawmakers here in Korea are moving to address the massive data leak that affected millions of credit card holders earlier this month. This as financial regulators plan to audit all of the nation's credit card firms for signs of trouble. Chim Young-gil has more.
The National Assembly will launch an investigation into the massive data leak that struck 3 card firms and affected millions of cardholders earlier this month. At a joint press briefing on Tuesday, the floor leaders of the ruling 새누리당 main opposition Democratic Party announced they had agreed to investigate the leak and draw up countermeasures. The investigation will aim to uncover the reasons for the leak at the 3 credit card firms, KB국민, 농협, and Lotte. Specifically, it will target the firm's system for securing data and sharing information with their affiliates. The investigation will be handled by the Parliamentary Policy Committee and will begin in February. Separate hearings on legislation against data theft will be conducted by other standing committees. The list of the countermeasures could include improvements to data management systems and legislation against the recurrence of similar incidents. Korea's financial regulators are currently auditing the 3 credit card firms in question and will start auditing 6 others as a follow-up measure beginning in February. This will be the first time the financial watchdog has audited all of the nation's credit card firms. Prosecutors announced earlier this month that the personal and financial data of 20 million credit card holders and tens of millions of bank customers had been leaked, prompting fears that the information could be used in scams, as well as concerns about the size and scope of data collection in Korea. Kim Hyung-gil, Arirang News.
A nuclear power reactor in Korea's southeastern county of Uljin stopped operating in the early hours of Wednesday morning after a warning signal came on. Officials say reactor Unit 5 at the Hanul nuclear power plant in Gyeongsang-Bukdo province automatically shut down at 4:17 a.m. Korea time. That's about 8 hours ago now. The operator of the reactor, Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power, says an investigation is currently underway to find the exact cause of the stoppage, but added the reactor is stable and there is no chance of a radiation leak. This is the second time since July last year that the 1 million kilowatt reactor has stopped due to technical problems. Now, Korea's overall labour market conditions have improved considerably since the global financial crisis of 2007, but it remains extremely difficult for the nation's young job seekers to find work, and the prospects going forward really don't look any better. Hwang Jie has this report.
Many college graduates and students who are in their last year of college here in Korea say that landing a job is a daunting task.
I thought English was my biggest barrier to getting a job, so I applied for an exchange student program, although I'm not that young. I'm now preparing for other certificates and attending academies.
These days, young people aim to get a professional and stable job, and to do so, they study very hard and prepare for a much longer period of time than before.
The employment rate for people between the ages of 15 and 29 stood at 39.7% last year, falling below 40% for the first time ever. This stands in contrast to the nation's overall employment rate, which actually rose 0.2 percentage points in 2013 from a year earlier. Experts say that the nation's lower youth employment rate compared to other OECD countries is due to their tendency to seek employment at large companies and the nation's high college entrance rate.
Young people spend 4 years in college and they spend another couple of years actually getting a job. Because the younger people are remaining economically inactive for a longer period of time, it's natural that the employment rate of the age group will drop.
In the long term, experts are concerned that the low youth employment rate could erode the nation's competitiveness, as the difficulties that younger people are facing now could affect their economic activities throughout their lifetime.
More young people without jobs for a long period of time means that they're losing the opportunity to raise their labor competitiveness by working. That will have a negative impact on the overall labor force of Korea in the long term.
The Korean government, meanwhile, has made raising the nation's youth employment rate a major part of its 3-year economic innovation plan set to be unveiled by the end of next month. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
For your fill of Korean and international news. Join Chae Yu-sun and Mark Broom every weekday at lunchtime. NEWSLINE at noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
U.S. President Barack Obama says he's prepared to act without Congress by using his executive power to advance parts of his agenda in order to fulfill a pledge he made to make 2014 a year of action. In his State of the Union address Tuesday, President Obama focused on issues related to the economy, namely income inequality and job creation. The U.S. president also touched upon immigration reform, including a path to citizenship for the country's 12 million undocumented residents. The speech comes ahead of congressional elections this November, and with U.S. polls indicating the public is dissatisfied with how Obama is handling the economy, it remains to be seen whether the current divisions in Congress persist once the elections are over. Turkey's central bank has hiked all of its main interest rates in a desperate attempt to stem the fall of its local currency. At an emergency meeting Tuesday, the country's overnight lending rate was raised to 12% from 7.75%, and the overnight borrowing rate shot up to 8% from 3.5%. The Turkish lira immediately strengthened after the move to 2.18 lira to the U.S. dollar. The lira had hit a record low of 2.39 on Monday. The value of Turkey's currency had been crumbling as investors traded their lira for other foreign currencies amid the ongoing turmoil in emerging markets. Ukraine's opposition has had a very productive 24 hours. First, Parliament voted to repeal the controversial anti-protest laws, which triggered violence that has now left 5 protesters dead. Then the country's deeply unpopular prime minister quit, saying he hoped it would help to achieve a peaceful resolution to the crisis. Our Connie Kim has the details.
Tensions and crisis hit Ukraine were diffused somewhat by developments Tuesday, which saw embattled President Viktor Yanukovych make a series of concessions to the opposition. In no position to refuse, Yanukovych accepted Prime Minister Mykola Azarov's resignation just hours after Parliament repealed highly controversial anti-protest laws, which triggered deadly clashes between protesters and riot police. Azarov said he hoped his resignation would go some way to resolving the political crisis. Yanukovych also signed to dismiss the rest of his cabinet. As well as that, he agreed to an amnesty for arrested protesters and to revise the constitution to weaken presidential powers. While protesters were delighted with the news, their leaders say the struggle goes on as they want Yanukovych out the door and new elections called as soon as possible. Protests erupted in Kiev in November last year when Yanukovych withdrew from a trade deal with the European Union in favor of closer ties with Russia. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Thailand's government has vowed to go ahead with the general election set for this weekend, despite the threat of further violence. The announcement came Tuesday after embattled Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra met with the nation's election watchdog, which has been pushing to delay the election. Watchers say the decision to go ahead with Sunday's election will further inflame tensions and chances of violence. Since the unrest began 2 months ago, 10 people have died and some 600 have been injured in clashes. Opposition leaders say the government is corrupt and is controlled by Yingluck's brother Thaksin Shinawatra, the nation's former leader, who was overthrown in a military coup in 2006. Now, back here in Korea, and Thursday, tomorrow, marks 1 year since Korea's narrow space rocket finally made it into space after 2 failed attempts and placed its load, a science satellite, into orbit. To mark this very special anniversary, our Song Ji-son went back to the Space Center to see what researchers are planning now.
It took 12 years and 3 attempts for Korea to join the Space Club by sending a homegrown rocket into space. While the first stage of the NATO rocket was built by Russian engineers, its follow-up, the Korea Space Launch Vehicle No. 2, aims to develop a full 3-stage rocket on Korean soil, from testing to launch. These are the key test facilities essential to building rocket engines, scheduled to be complete in April, ahead of a first test run in May.
This is a combustor testing facility. Under such extreme conditions, where thousands of tons of fuel is burned within seconds, anything can happen if the test fails. So the emitter looks over to the sea, and the concrete safety wall is a meter thick to absorb the impact.
A total of 7 new buildings will be lined up here at NATO Space Center, and a brand new, larger launch pad will also be constructed next to the current launcher to test launch one completed rocket in 2017. NATO's science satellite was only 100 kilograms, but the KSLV-2 will carry a practical low-orbit satellite 15 times heavier at 1.5 tons. 4 75-ton engines will be needed to send the 3-stage rocket into space, 4 times the size needed for the NATO. If successful in placing its satellite into orbit in 2020, the KSLV-2 will also be used to send a moon orbiter in the same year. Some may wonder if the fast-forwarded timeline is feasible, but the chief says it is, especially as Korea's space agency may now have a new partner other than Russia in moon exploration.
And in terms of the Lunar Explorer, we have stronger international cooperation. NASA has offered to collaborate in moon exploration, as they will be involved in it at the same time we aim to send a lunar lander.
To foster industry growth and profitability, Seoul aims to also use the rocket to launch other countries' satellites. 송지선, Arirang News, 고흥.
Now, we're just one day away from the start of the Lunar New Year holiday here in Korea, and it already feels like New Year here in the capital, Seoul. Our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won reports from one of the city's many New Year's events for the city's foreign residents.
The Lunar New Year holiday is one of the most celebrated times of the year in Korea, and about 150 expats had a special chance to kick off the festivities in advance. They took part in various holiday traditions, from wearing the traditional Korean clothing hanbok to learning how to properly perform a New Year's bow to elders.
앉을 때 한 손을 이렇게 오른손으로 앉으셔서 이제 일어날 때는 좀 어렵고요. 근데 재밌었어요.
An ancestral worship ceremony the Koreans typically perform on Lunar New Year Day was demonstrated, as well as traditional Korean outdoor games like 제기차기 and 투호.
We don't have our families in here, but we have the opportunity to enjoy with friends and learn everything about Korean.
한국 사람이랑 같이 이렇게 세배도 하고 꽤 많이 하고 뭔가 가족처럼 있는 거 느끼고 좋았습니다.
The Seoul Global Center invited the expats to share in the fun and joy of the holiday, as they will be away from their families during this holiday season.
설날 시간이 제일 자기 나라 생각나고 외롭잖아요. 그래서 서울에서 외국인 위한 설날 행사 많이 있어서 전통적인 문화 느낄 수 있고.
Participants also shared a meal of tteokguk, or rice cake soup, that Koreans traditionally eat on Lunar New Year morning. And this event is just one of the many festive activities organized by the Seoul City government in celebration of the Lunar New Year holiday. Royal palaces will be open for free on Lunar New Year's Day, and many traditional cultural performances will be offered for free at more than 20 museums, parks, and traditional theaters in Seoul during the holiday season that runs until the end of this week. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Okay, well, it's time to get a check-up on the weather now, a Seoul Lunar New Year version of the weather with our Lee Ji-an, standing by at the Weather Center. Hello and Happy New Year to you, Ji-an.
Well, good afternoon, Mark and Yusan. Well, this winter was expected to be colder than last, but it has turned out to be one of the warmest winters and mildest Januaries in 7 years. And this afternoon, it should feel like early spring again. But it won't be quite as sunny as this morning, because we'll have lots of clouds rolling into the country as we go through the day. Now, we have rain in the forecast starting early tomorrow morning, so if you're going to be out on the roads in the early hours, be extra careful. And the rain could continue until the late afternoon in Seoul metro area. And we also have more rain in the forecast for the rest of the week. It will rain all day long on Saturday, and that should continue until Sunday morning. But temperatures will be on the mild side throughout the Lunar New Year holiday. With that in mind, here are the readings for today. The afternoon high in Seoul will get up to 7 this afternoon, while Gwangju and Busan should top out at 13. Now for other regions, it looks like Jeju will climb up to 15 in the afternoon, while the top temperature on Mount Kumgang will be at 0. Well, hope you have a wonderful Lunar New Year holiday, and back to Mark and Yusan in the studio.
Thank you very much, Jion, for that. And those are the stories we're following at this hour. And as Jion said, we'd like to wish all our viewers out there a very happy Lunar New Year.
Well, Happy New Year to you too, Mark.
Thank you.
And join us again next Monday right here on NEWSLINE at noon.